Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news. Manchester United have apparently made contact with Ten Hag. Pochettino remains the favourite. Players turn on Harry Maguire, ? And also a club moves for Ruben Neves that's not Manchester United. So lots to get into on the show this morning, the morning show. Of course, we've got Ralph Rangnick's press conference reaction for you this afternoon as well as we build towards the massive game against Manchester City, of which you can see my preview on the home page. But look, let's fly straight into this. There's a lot going on around Ten Hag at the moment. And last night there was another report coming out that Manchester United have made contact with Ten Hag to understand what his situation is, which in turn led to a lot of excitement within the fan base. We also had another report last night saying that Ralph Rangnick supports the appointment of Ten Hag and sees him as the right sort of manager with the right sort of style to move Manchester United forward. And I think that's an interesting place to start, because what is the point in having Rangnick at the club for 6 months just as a stopgap to then go, thanks very much, we'll keep you on in a consultancy role, but we're going to go in a completely different direction now. It would be typically Manchester United, but it would be absolutely nonsensical. What is the point in having a manager in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Jose Mourinho that are very different types of managers, but are also very pragmatic types of managers, as we saw over the last 5 years at United, to bring in Ralph Rangnick, who wants to play a more Klopp style of football, a more high line, high press, rock and roll style of football. Bring him in for 6 months, can't really get it going because of the players we've got, but sees how we can get it going, to then go to a manager that doesn't play that style of football. It would just seem a little bit weird, but it would also seem very Manchester United to me. So, and also, especially if Rangnick's going to stay on in a consultancy role, it would be even more silly. I mean, I suppose the two scenarios are, we either go with the type of a Ten Hag type of manager that Ralph Rangnick wants to stay and work with, and the club want Rangnick to stay and work with, or we completely part ways with Rangnick in the summer and we just go with Pochettino and forget the Rangnick thing ever happened. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. The question on every United fan's mind is, who's in a worse situation, us now or Liverpool in the 90s? If it's us, then we're looking at 20 plus years, says Mark. Well, that question's not on my mind, Mark, and I don't think it's on everybody else's mind. It's on Mark's mind. It's really not on my mind. I couldn't give two shits basically about whether we're worse than Liverpool in the 90s, because what does that deliver? The reality is, I don't think we're a very well-run football club. I mean, I said last night, basically this news story came out that Ralph Rangnick would back Manchester United going for Ten Hag, and he sees him as the right choice. And then we had this other story coming out that that Manchester United have approached Ten Hag to understand what his situation is. Of course, that's not offering him the job, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I do think that I put a tweet out last night. I can't remember what it was. It was something like, Manchester United, it's going to be Poch or it's going to be Ten Hag, and it's going to be a brave stroke stupid decision to go with Pochettino. To which somebody replied, well, surely you want a club that listens to the football people and not the fans. That's what we all want. And I don't think that's what I want. I don't know what you want. And of course, look, I can't be asked to get into battles about whose opinion's more valid. At the end of the day, I have my opinion. It's my opinion. And that's it. If people want to agree with it, disagree with it, great. That's the whole point of having a fan channel, really. But ultimately, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with they shouldn't listen to the fans. They should listen to the football people in the club, because ideally, yeah, I think back to the days under Sir Alex Ferguson, and I would certainly agree with that. But I don't agree with that at the moment. Like, who are these football people that we're meant to listen to? I mean, I hear about John Murtough new in the role. He's been at the club for 7, 8, 9 years. He's not really new in the role. He's got a new role as director of football, but he's been head of development at Manchester United for nearly 10 years. I don't think his role as director of football, which was a role that wasn't even there. Listen to the quotes of Solskjaer a year ago when they gave Murtough the job. He basically said he'd been doing that job anyway. But some people want to go, and maybe they're getting little DMs off him. Maybe they've got his email address. I don't know. But there seems to be a protection of Murtough, like he's just walked into a new role. I want him to do well. Maybe he can do well. But ultimately, he's not come in as an external director of football. He's been in that club working with Woodward for years and years and years. I don't trust his opinion. Trust is earned. In life and in football, trust is earned. I don't trust Darren Fletcher, Murtough, Arnold. I don't trust any of them to make the right decision on our next manager. Now, if Ralf Rangnick's part of that conversation, yeah, that's a football person I will listen to, because he sits in press conferences, he speaks very eloquently, in depth about tactics, about the wider game of football, and we've seen an improvement in the way that we've been since he's been here. If Ralf Rangnick is advising the club on who the manager should be, I as a fan am willing to take a step back and go, he knows what he's on about, let's go. But if it's not Ralf Rangnick and it's Fletcher, Murta, bloody Arnold and whoever else, I'm like, nah, I've had 9 years of this. I'm not listening to you think Pochettino's the right choice. I don't agree with you. I think Ten Hag's the right choice. So look, it's all about opinion, but I'm not sitting back and saying let the football people at Manchester United make the choice over what the vast majority of the fans think. And the vast majority of the fans have made it very clear that they would love to see somebody like Ten Hag, who's exciting, new, who isn't somebody else's damaged goods. Poch was Spurs manager. We did this with Mourinho. I don't think it's the right choice personally, but if you do, that's fine. This job causes managers to go grey and lose their hair. At least we're skipping that step with Ten Hag, says Joshua. And problem is, why go for Ten Hag if the board won't back him? Just going to be in the same place year after year. But that's always going to be the case, Callum. That's a bigger issue. We have to appoint a manager in the summer. You're absolutely 100%, Callum, right that whoever we bring in is probably going to fail because of this board. But that doesn't mean that we can't get a manager in the summer. It doesn't mean that we can't sign players. We can be pessimistic about the future regardless of who the manager is. The only way to change that is to change the owners and change the board. But that's nothing. This board are going to recruit a manager. We're not replacing the board, are we? We're not replacing the owners. We're not replacing the football people in the club. Mark, I love your content, regular viewer of your show, but I'm surprised that you have always criticised Glazers rightly, but never questioned Sir Alex because he was the one who wanted them, still backs them, says Druv. I won't. Well, you don't need to be surprised, Druv. It's not Silla Black time. Surprise, surprise. Rest in peace, Silla. I've always been very consistent. Every personality has a flaw. I don't think it's a flaw. I've always said I just think Sir Alex Ferguson, for me personally, is beyond reproach. I just will not criticise him because the I wouldn't even say the good, the amazing far outweighs any perceived negative for me. If you want to do that, that's your life. That's your opinion. If you want to criticise Sir Alex and say he's part of the problem, that's up to you. But I just can't. It's just beyond. So very few people are beyond reproach. But I think Sir Alex Ferguson, as a football manager and what he's done for Manchester United, Ten Hag's style is more focused on slow build-up, keeping the ball. Rangnick is very vertical press and win second balls. Very, very different, says Andre. I don't think so. I don't think they are different at all, Andre. I think Ten Hag's style of football is closer to Rangnick than Pochettino, and ultimately we're not looking at a manager that is close to Rangnick. So whilst I understand your point, Andre, and respect it, I also do not think Pochettino's style of football. I think Ten Hag's style of football is closer to Rangnick, and that would be why Rangnick is backing. We're backing him. We are not looking at a manager that replicates even close to the way that Rangnick plays, because that would be a Hasenhüttl, that would be a Tuchel, that would be a Klopp, that would be a Nagelsmann, and I would love a Nagelsmann, but we're not going to get that. So if you're trying to say we shouldn't go with Ten Hag because he doesn't play like Rangnick, well, Pochettino doesn't either. And I remember what I've said as well. You've got to look at the bigger picture. It's how to rebuild Manchester United. Is Ten Hag's style of football much better than any manager we've had in the last 9 years? Yes. So that's definitely an improvement. But it's also about how you rebuild the club. And we were speaking about this a couple of nights ago. How do you rebuild Manchester United? And for me... it's them again. For me... Leave me alone, Murta. It's too late. I've already spoken about you. For me... When you're looking about how you rebuild the club, you've got Poch's way, which I think will be British-based, and he will want Declan Rice and he will want Harry Kane. And then you've got Ten Hag's way, where I think he will be looking at Anthony and 40 to 50 million pound signings. And instead of getting 2 big signings, he wants 5 40 to 50 million signings, which is the way Rangnick would go. So it's not just about the style of football; it's about how he would rebuild the club. And I think that is why I would go with him. I think Ten Hag is another social media choice, says Robert McCormack. Well, I don't think you're wrong, Roberts. I think he is a social media choice because that's how fans communicate. I mean, it makes me laugh how, and I'm not calling you out, Robert, but there is a negativity around social media fans. Like, you get Manchester United fans criticising social media fans on social media. And I'm like, I don't think they get the hypocrisy of it, because we can't communicate if we don't have social media. We're all back on fan forums on the bloody internet, waiting to 5 minutes for someone to reply, and you don't know what people think about your comments. Social media, obviously it's got a negative, we know that, but that's the way that fans communicate. What other way do fans have of communicating? So United approached Ten Hag. Are you serious? This is not just a story. Wait, the board is listening to Ralph. I think I'm dreaming, says the Studio Saga. Well, yeah, going back to the story that Manchester United have approached Ten Hag, remember that the story said that Manchester United have approached Ten Hag to understand his situation. I don't think this is a cap in hand, take the job from United. I think this is an acknowledgement that they've got to speak to him. There's two scenarios, really. There's probably 4 or 5 scenarios, but there's 2 stark scenarios. 1, United want to speak to Ten Hag because they really want him for the job. 2, they're talking to Ten Hag because they know they've got to talk to Ten Hag because of, the weight of opinion that United should go for him. So they're like, well, we better talk to him and find a way not to give him the job. So it'll be one of those 2. Talking to Ten Hag had to happen. It will get people excited, but it was always going to happen, and it had to happen. He is one of the 2 or 3 top candidates for this job. If United are truly going to conduct a thorough search for a manager, then they've got to do that. We'll see what happens with it. It's just the first talk. But if you look at the bookies, and I'm not saying the bookies are always right, Pochettino is the favourite to get the job. I think he's evens, and I think Ten Hag is just over 2-1. So I'm not saying the bookies are right, but from what I've heard, from what I've read, I think Pochettino is what Manchester United want. We keep changing managers, but it's the same players, says Dominic. Also, Mark, do you think if Ten Hag achieves at United, we could be considered challenging with City, Chelsea and Liverpool and maybe fighting for a title? I wouldn't even think like that, Josh. I'd love you to think like that, and as a Manchester United fan, you should think like that. You should be thinking, when are we going to win a title? When are we going to win a Champions League? And you know what, Josh? Keep doing it, because they are the standards that this football club should have. But if I'm honest, they've allowed the club to fall so far, I don't think title talk is really relevant to us. It's pie in the sky. It's like Newcastle before they had the money talking about a title. We are miles away. I don't even know what the future is for Manchester United. Personally, I don't think it's that great. As I said yesterday, you compare City's starting lineup with United's starting lineup, and I can't get a United player in a combined 11, but I can get 10 of our players in a starting 11 for social media followings, and that will be making the Glazers a shitload of money. And unfortunately, a lot of fans don't understand it. I tweeted about it yesterday morning, and people didn't understand the angle I was coming from. And what I was saying is that this is evidence of the whole winning team shit. We can play crap at the weekend and get a crap result, but they can still get on their socials on Tuesday because they've won at training, and it'll probably get more interaction on a United win at training picture than than teams like Norwich, Southampton, than probably half of the Premier League get combined when they actually win a Premier League game. That's wrong on all kinds of level. But United can just make loads of money by just siloing themselves off in this bubble where basically, I know we lost at the weekend in a real game, but let's pretend we win a game on training and we do loads of pictures and we put some clips of the goals that were scored in training. Guarantee United will get more interaction on training goals and winning a training match than half the Premier League combined would get when they win a proper match. And that's why they're going nowhere, and that's why I'm worried, because we're getting worse and worse on the pitch. I mean, not getting one player in a combined 11 with City is disgusting. We're getting worse and worse on the pitch, but we're making more and more money off the pitch, and they're more and more successful. If Ten Hag comes in, will the board allow him to drop the social media players and allow him the time to rebuild, says Callum? Well, probably not, because we've just explained why not. Because we're all about that. Mark, what was Woodward's payout? Got no idea, Mark. On the players' note, even one switch can make a difference to this team. Switch Maguire out and the team will be decent enough to win a few games, says the Studio Saga. Thanks for the super chat there. But yeah, you know what? We'll see what happens with that. Ten Hag talks, they were always going to happen. They will happen. I don't think we'll get anything massively concrete about this for a few more weeks, but I believe United are going to go for Pochettino. I do. I think United are absolutely... I think if the full weight of the fan base wanted Pochettino, they'd be working on it even more. But I think at the moment they're trying to find a situation where they can give Pochettino the job. And, if PSG knock Real Madrid out next week, I think that will get hyped up even more. If he does get knocked out next week, he'll be sacked, and United will go for him anyway. So it's a win-win. I think at this moment in time, I still think they're going to go for Pochettino. That's not what I want, but I still I think that's what United want, and I've heard that probably 4 or 5 times in the last 5 months that they do desperately want Pochettino. And part of it's Ed Woodward's legacy as well, because he was always obsessed with Pochettino, and obviously I think Ed Woodward's still a consultant for the club, and wouldn't surprise me if he's staying and get Pochettino. So we'll see what happens with that. On from the manager chat, interesting conversation, interesting again. Remember, spoke about the comments in the Times yesterday about players disillusioned as to why Harry Maguire's starting so many games when he's not playing well. Another story from another UK outlet. Remember yesterday morning the journalist who said that Ten Hag dreamed about taking the United job. Same journalist last night in the same paper saying that, I think it was the Daily Mail, saying that 2 things. Manchester United players are becoming more and more frustrated with Harry Maguire and his post-match interviews where he's blaming others when he's not playing well himself, which we've spoken about on this channel before. I've seen Maguire come out after losses before where he's made a mistake and then he doesn't acknowledge the mistake himself but talks about the strikers not taking their chances. And it wouldn't be like last week. It would be a graveyard shift game where, Cavani's run around and not even had a chance, and then Maguire's cost us the game. So that's true. I don't know whether it's really coming from the players or not, but there seems to be quite a few leaks coming out about Harry Maguire again. I don't know whether they're coming from the dressing room or not. I mean, I can't be arsed with that sort of stuff anymore, but there's certainly 2 different outlets yesterday coming out with the same sort of thing, that Harry Maguire is frustrating players within that team. I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't know. It's a news show. We're talking about the news. But what I would say is that both the way the stories have been written are true. I don't know whether they've come from players, but, is Harry Maguire being picked and it's baffling? Yeah, because he's not playing well. And has he come out after interviews as the captain and blamed others instead of himself? Yes. And that's weak leadership as well. We can talk about whether he's a good player, whether he's a good captain, but that article last night reminded me of some of the times he comes out after a match and blames others and doesn't take responsibility for himself. I mean, he just doesn't have... I don't know why Ollie gave him the captaincy. For me, he just doesn't have the traits of a captain of Burnley, let alone a captain of Manchester United or Liverpool or Man City. So, I mean, ultimately, he's just out of his depth. He's been over-promoted. But the easiest thing there is not to start, getting obsessed. Because also in the same article, it says that Rangnick, whilst publicly backing Maguire, acknowledges the need to bring a centre-back in the summer. Well, why do we need another centre-back when we've got Varane, unless we're going to replace Maguire? So look, there's a weight of... I think what's happened with Maguire this week is something we've been talking about for months and months and months. You've had Rio Ferdinand come out talk about him. You've now got the papers talking about him. And this happens, and this is why I love fan content and fan opinion, and the opportunity for fans to express their opinion, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, is that you have been talking with me about Harry Maguire and about that midfield for a very long time. And we talk and talk and talk about it, and it, we almost move past it because we're like, it's like the Donny thing. We talk and talk and talk, and then about 6 months after, an ex-player or a journalist will write what we've been talking about for 6 months, and then it becomes a bigger issue. And for us as fans, we're like, why is Harry Maguire big news this week? Why are they talking about his lack of leadership in press conferences, post-match interviews? Why are they talking about his consistently bad performance? Why are they talking about his lack of pace? Why are they talking about why is he playing? We've been doing this for 6 months. It's slow sports news. And what ex-players and the media do is they wait until it's the right time for them safely to say something controversial. And then it comes across as controversial because it's the mainstream media talking about it, or it's an ex-player talking about it. But actually, fans will have been talking about it on the sharp end when it was a hot topic and when it was generating debate. And, will have taken the flack of whether it's worth a debate or not. And then they swoop in at the end with their slow sports news and state the bleeding obvious. And it becomes a big story. And I don't think whether Harry Maguire is a good captain or why he's being picked is a big story anymore. For me, the only story is he shouldn't be playing against Man City on Sunday. Never in a million years. It should be Varane and Lindelof. They played well in the last game against Watford. They played well before Victor Lindelof had his house unfortunately burgled. They're our best centre-back pairing. we probably need something better than Lindelof if we want to be a team that at some point challenges for major trophies. But right here, right now, Lindelof and Varane are our best centre-back pairing, and Maguire should be dropped. Lack of pace, lack of leadership, lack of form is irrelevant. All I'm thinking about is Man City on Sunday, and he shouldn't be starting. End of story. Let's move about on something else. Poch's greatest achievement will be second with United, says the Studio Saga. Players now sign for United thinking they've made it, rather than signing thinking they have the opportunity to make greatness. And I think that's a great point by Mark as well. I know it's a different point, but I think it's a great point as well. Is that these players come to United with 100,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram, and within a year or so, they've got, what did I write down? So we're talking about Harry Maguire. He's got 3.9 million followers on Instagram. How? No, sorry, that's Luke Shaw. He's got 3.4 million followers on Instagram, and Ruben Diaz has got 1.2. How has Harry Maguire got 3.4 million followers on Instagram, and Ruben Diaz has got 1.2 million? With all due respect, Harry doesn't come across as the most enthusiastic, charismatic person, does he? So it's not like he's on Instagram every day in his shades and his swimming trunks, with his six-pack and, driving a boat and stuff like that. It's like, it's the Manchester United effect. You come to Manchester United and you just get this massive exposure. So I almost think that United need to look at the player that they're recruiting, and this is something that Rangnick's been very big on. If you buy a player from Leicester or from Crystal Palace or from Southampton or wherever, and they're coming to United and they're going, oh my God, my socials are going off, I've made it. You can understand why they fall into the trap, because they come to United and they're suddenly massively popular, and everyone's like, they're just massively popular. It's like it's a dream come true. I can understand why players come and do that. They're living the dream. What we want are players that are not interested in that come to Manchester United and want to prove that they're good enough to play at this level. And that's where we go wrong. We bring players in who are really happy to come here, and I think they get blinded by the lights. Ooh, blinded by the lights. I do. I think they get blinded by the lights, blinded by the hype, and they don't kick on. I'm a Man United player now. Look at me. I've got this, I've got that. We want the players that come to Manchester United and want to kick on. Probably someone like Bruno, but then what you also need is a manager that can allow them to kick on. And we've failed on two levels. We've brought players to the club who think have been blinded by the lights of Manchester United and gone, oh, I've made it. And we've also had the other problem where we've got managers that don't kick them up the arse and develop them either. So I think a player like Bruno comes into the club and he wants to use this as a platform to show the world what he's all about. But then he's had a manager for 2 years who hasn't developed him. So we need the manager who can develop, and we need the players who want to kick on. And that's where we failed on both levels, I feel, in the last few years. Talking about players coming in, story in, I think it was in the Mail as well, about Ruben Neves going to Barcelona in the summer. Now, I thought I'd bring this in because I was live on Twitch last night, and we, for a little bit of it, I was doing a bit of a Q&A, and we were doing, I was using the WeScout website where they, they've got in-depth stats and you can compare players. So we were going through the CDM position and it was quite interesting. I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse. Basically, we compared Ndidi, Neves, Rice, Bissouma. And basically, Ndidi is the best defensive midfielder in relation to tackling actions per game, successful tackles. He's the best defensively. Declan Rice is the best offensively in relation to forward passing, pass completions, etc. Bissouma is very well-rounded. He's good defensively and he's good with passing, but he's not as good as Declan Rice at passing, and he's not as good as Ndidi defensively. So you've got Ndidi, who's the best holding defensive type of midfielder. You've got Declan Rice, who's the best offensive holding midfielder in the fact that he gets the ball and passes it. And I'm not talking about Declan Rice scoring goals or anything like that. What I'm saying is he's a holding midfielder who gets the ball and passes it forward well. And then you've got Bissouma, who's sort of a combination of the two. He's more balanced. With Ruben Neves, the interesting thing with Ruben Neves, he's quite balanced. He's quite like Bissouma, but he's got the worst forward pass completion rate out of all of them. I think Declan Rice was around 80-something%, and for forward passing completions, and Ruben Neves was 66%. And people on the chat were going, oh, no, we don't want Ruben Neves then. But if you watch Ruben Neves, I think I know why he's got a low forward pass completion rate, because he fucking hits loads of long balls. That's what Wolves do. They're a counter-attacking team. So, my point is, if you were watching the show last night or you weren't, you know what I'm talking about now. But there was a concern about Neves that his forward pass completion rate is very, very low. It's lower than Bissouma, Rice and Ndidi, and by quite a long way. And people were like, God, we don't want him. He'd be worse than McTominay. But if Barcelona are looking at him and other clubs are looking at him, and he has been linked to Man City and Liverpool, I wouldn't... This is where stats can be deceptive if you don't know the player. Ruben Neves hits a lot of long passes. So, you know, Declan Rice may have a very high forward passing rate and he's probably very good at it. But maybe Declan Rice is in a team, West Ham, where when they've got possession, keeping possession is very important when they're going forward. With Ruben Neves, it's trying to hit that long ball probably more often. So I wouldn't be worried about... What I'm trying to say is I wouldn't be worried about Neves's forward passing completion rate being very low, because I think a lot of it's to do with the amount of balls he hits. And we've spoken about this about Neves before. He does hit a lot of long passes. So, but I like what Savage says. We need 2 midfielders out of all those options. I would love, you know what? In an ideal world, I actually quite like Bissouma. The interesting thing is that Bissouma is 25 and so is Ndidi, which I think might surprise people when you actually think of it like that. But I wouldn't want Ndidi because I think he would cost you probably 70 million. I wouldn't want Declan Rice because I think he'd cost you about 90 million. I would like to get Bissouma and Neves, and then you get those 2 players for the same price as Declan Rice, and you've got 2 very balanced players there. I don't know whether United will do that. I certainly don't think we'll get Bissouma and Neves, but I think I can see the value in Declan Rice. I definitely can, but it's the price. It's Declan price, isn't it? Mark, love the show and content. What do you think it would take to have Maguire benched, or does his 80 million price tag make him untouchable so the club can avoid embarrassment? Have a great weekend, says Tim. I think the latter, Tim. If I'm absolutely honest, I don't think he will be benched long term. I don't think he'll be benched on Sunday. And I think he's going to continue to be a first choice centre-back for the next couple of years. I don't think he's sellable. And I don't think he's droppable, because it's a major embarrassment for the club when he's an £80 million player on 200 grand a week and he's the captain of the club. They've basically hamstrung themselves completely. And you know, somebody said something to me the other day, and I'd love to know. I'd love to know if there's any truth in this. It was somebody messaged me and said that they worked in finance, and the way that the Glazers leverage their debt, this might be true. Where if you, you know, look, I'm speaking very helicopter view here, but effectively, United's debt will be serviced in different ways, and what that means is that the way that they pay their debts will be dependent on assets that the club have. And if you've got somebody like Harry Maguire, he would be an asset for the club. It's like, you know, if you've got a house, your car on your drive is an asset, and it might be worth, you know, 20 grand. So when you've got a mortgage, you know, you can leverage that asset against your mortgage, and it makes your payments cheaper or something like that. So this person messaged me and said that that's how debt can work in relation to what United are doing. Now, this would explain why we're not very good at selling players, because if you've got Anthony Martial and he's an asset, his value when you listed him as an asset could have been 70 million because he might have been quite good. And if you sell him for 30 million, that 70 million asset's gone and you only get 30 million pound for it. Now, it's quite complicated, and I don't even know if it's true, and maybe better finance minds than me would know that. But if you think about it, if United have listed all these players as assets of the club to leverage against their debt, if you've got Martial listed as a £70 million asset, and that's making your debt repayments cheaper, if you remove that £70 million asset and you're only getting £30 million back, that's £40 million that's disappeared in relation to your debt leverage. Well, you could say that about Maguire as well. He's an £80 million asset on the books because that's what they paid for him. He's not worth that. And, you know, if that was true, and look, better financial minds than me would have to delve into it and see if that's how United work. But if that was true, it might explain why we don't sell players. Because, you know, even people like Rojo were probably listed as 15 million. We're never going to get that. Andreas Pereira's probably listed as 15 million. So it's probably why we're so crap at selling players, if there was any truth in it. But as I said, I don't know the depth of that. That would be for greater financial minds to look into it. But if we have these players listed as assets to leverage our debt, then why would they want to sell Harry Maguire anyway? Because he's listed as £80 million. We're never going to get that. So it would be a loss for the club on 2 levels. So, But that might be one reason. I just don't. I think United are, and I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. I think United are run by bad football people, and I don't trust them. So I would never sit here and go, let's trust the football people in the club on Pochettino, because I don't think it's the right decision. And on the flip side of that, I don't think these football people would consider selling Harry Maguire. I think they'll think, oh no, he's good enough. But the reality is, the sad thing is as well, if you don't think Harry Maguire's good enough, or you don't think McTominay's good enough, or you don't think Fred's good enough, or you don't think Bruno's good enough, you're unlikely to change your mind. And the issue you've got with people like Fred and Maguire is, they're 29, basically. I think Maguire's 29 in the next couple of weeks. He's only going to get older. He's not going to suddenly spray WD-40 on his back and become more agile and fast, is he? It's only his weaknesses are only going to become more amplified. Fred's out of contract in a year. I don't know why people aren't talking about that. Fred's out of contract in a year. United are going to have to give Fred a new contract. And I agree they've got to give him a new contract because no one will buy him. But what are we giving him a new contract for? He's not actually been very good this season. I know we scored a few goals, Mark. Yeah, mate, can you remember the start of the season when people were pulling their hair out about McTominay and Fred? He does not deserve a new contract at this club. He's a £50 million player, but he's a £50 million asset. We can't let him go out the door. Let's give him a new contract. So, yeah, there's a few players in that team that you just think, we're lumbered here. Can Garner get into the starting 11? He has had 2 very good seasons on loan. Mo, if you want to put James Garner in United's starting 11, crack on. Personally, in my opinion, I think it's massively irresponsible and massively unfair. We've seen it with Elanga 3 weeks ago. He's a load of crap, get rid of him because he had one bad game. Do you trust our fan base when Garner plays a couple of games for us and doesn't do particularly well? Do you trust them not to say, what a load of hyped shit, getting back in the Championship? But the reality is he probably is good enough. But any young player takes time to adjust. Can we afford to put a player into centre midfield and let him make mistakes and adjust over the next 2 years? I don't think we can. But I think people have the fantasy that you're going to drop Garner into Man United's midfield and we're going to win the league. Like, look at how Phil Foden's one of the best young players in England. Look at what Pep did with him. And he's an attacker. He didn't just throw him in every week. He nurtured him into a very good side. You've got to nurture these young players into good sides. I don't think throwing James Garner into our midfield is a good idea. I think it's bloody ridiculous. I think it's stupid. He should be going on loan next season to a Premier League side to get used to the Premier League. And then maybe the year after, we start using him. But what I don't want to see is what we've done in the past, where we say, we're not loaning you out, you can train with the first team for a year, and then he never bloody plays. But what we must do with these young players is be very careful with them. We know what to do with young players, and it's not keep them and not play them, and it's not throw them in at the deep end so that they can be bloody slaughtered when they have a bad game, which they will do because they're young. That's what happened at Derby, Mark. They listed the players' assets at above market value to borrow and spend against it to try and get promoted. Well, there you go, Seb. You know, maybe that's what United do. Anyway, look, we've got Ralph Rangnick's press conference coming up. I think it's about 2 o'clock. We'll be live reacting to that. It is the Derby, the Manchester Derby this weekend, which I am looking forward to because it's a derby. I'm not actually scared or nervous about it. It's a derby. I expect these players to turn up in a derby. It's a great leveller, and I don't think they've got any excuses. I know Man City are better than us, but it's a derby. You know, I expect Manchester United to perform. If you can't get up for this game, what you're all about? If they play badly on Sunday and we lose badly on Sunday, it's one thing to bottle wins against Burnley and Southampton and Middlesbrough. In a game like this, they've got to perform. I don't care who they are. And we've seen them perform in the past. We've been 2-0 down there before and won 3-2. So we can do it, and I'm looking forward to it. I will be on Twitch at 3 o'clock, but I'll be back on here before that for the press conference reaction for Rangnick. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching.